Hello and welcome to another Planet Destiny State of the Weapon video. Today we'll be going over pulse rifles, their history, current state in the meta, and the best overall perks. So in the first half of Year 1, pulse rifles were literally the worst possible weapon. You know how bad Dreg's Promise is now? Well, imagine that for an entire weapon class. Fortunately, Bungie buffed their damage up to make them compete with other primaries. Towards the end of Year 1, the slowest rate of fire pulses gained infamy in the Crucible, where they were able to burst down most players in 2 bursts with relative ease. A new type of pulse rifle was also introduced with weapon foundries during the Taken King as well. Hake pulse rifles added another round to their burst, totaling 4, but they never really found their way into the meta due to their unwieldy recoil. After a few months of Taken King, pulse rifles faced their first big round of nerfs since they didn't really have any fall-off damage like other primary weapons did. Now we're in a meta where pulse rifles are still extremely viable weapons, able to pump out large amounts of precision damage in both PvP and PvE. Speaking of which, despite their high damage potential, we don't really see them used that often in PvE. Yeah, Bad Juju has kind of always been a staple due to its ability to recharge your super, and Red Death allows you to essentially never worry about your health. But I'm talking more about the entire weapon class. Aside from a few exotics, they just don't really compare to the consistency of scout rifles. Since it's in a pulse rifle's nature to be difficult to get max damage out of, you don't want to use one in case you're unable to maximize their damage when you really need it. The medium rate of fire ones like Nerwin's Mercy, the Raid Pulse, and No Time to Explain are probably the best to use in PvE. They have a great balance between damage output, ease of use, and ammo capacity. The faster rate of fire ones like Hawksaw and Grasp are still good to put out damage as well, but I find that you end up using too much ammo in the magazine and have to rapidly press the trigger, causing you to miss some shots when tracking moving targets. They aren't optimal, but they'll work if you really feel attached to a particular weapon. The slowest rate of fire archetype just aren't worth it in PvE. Their recoil is usually just too unwieldy to maximize their damage, and even then, their rate of fire is just too slow to be viable in most encounters. In PvP, pulse rifles are one of the most dominant primary weapons. Weapons like Hawksaw, PDX-45, Grasp of Malok are able to work in most engagements since it takes 3 bursts to kill. They're amazingly forgiving since even if you don't land all precision shots, it will usually take only like 4 bursts to down a target. They don't have a massive range fall-off penalty, so the time to kill stays consistent at pretty much all ranges. You'll be able to do well as long as the rifle has a good amount of stability. The medium rate of fire pulse rifles like Nerwin's Mercy or No Time to Explain also have the same properties. The reason they don't see much play though is because they're just slower. Nerwin's Mercy can kill in 3 bursts, but why even bother when Hawksaw does it as well, but faster? The slowest archetype of pulse rifle is in a sad state currently for PvP. It goes from one of the fastest time to kills to one of the slowest. The other big problem is that they require unbelievably specific perks. Since their potential damage is so high, Bungie has seen fit to make the recoil so unruly that it pretty much requires counterbalance and a high stability boost to even make them consistent. This leads me to the Hake pulse rifles. Unfortunately, their recoil has such a heavy horizontal pull that it also requires either completely maxed out stability or counterbalance with a small stability roll. This leaves little to the customization side of things and makes the entire archetype of weapon kinda dull. The 2 faster types of pulse rifles are viable enough that they are considered to be the highest tier of primaries for PvP, especially if they get a good roll. I would really just like to see the slowest archetype built up a little bit more so it didn't require really specific perks. Maybe slowing them down even more so that they can reliably 2-burst people, but the penalty is even more severe than it currently is for missing some. It's just a thought. Moving on to perks. First up are the pulse rifle exclusive perks. Secret Round is an interesting perk that doesn't really come into play much. It finally does exactly what the perk says after about a year of it doing some other stuff. If you miss a round in the burst, then it'll add a free round into the burst. It's useful if you miss one of your initial rounds so that you can at least make up for a loss in damage. If you hit your target with the first shot though, chances are you won't take advantage of it unless there's a target behind your original target that the extra rounds can hit. So in general, this perk isn't that amazing, but it isn't a deal breaker either. The other pulse rifle exclusive perk is Headseeker. This is a staple since it helps mitigate damage lost. No one is a god who hits every single round as precision. Headseeker exists just to increase that precision damage from the inevitable body shot that you will land. It's an absolute tier 1 perk on almost every single pulse rifle. Alright, now just for general perks. The first major one I like on pulse rifles is Counterbalance. It really means I can focus on range and reload since it makes the recoil almost completely vertical. Full auto. For faster firing archetypes like Hawksaw and the PDX-45, I really like having full auto as an option. I only pick it if the gun has high enough base stability for sustained fire though. If there's too much kick, then I'll usually just pass on this perk. If the gun also has a slower rate of fire like Spare Change archetype, then it's just completely wasted. Rangefinder. It's pretty much a great baseline perk to go for on any weapon. If you end up getting some stability boosts on the gun that affect the range, then Rangefinder is a fantastic way to make up for that range loss. The extra bump in range will also help out with the aim assist a little bit. Speaking of aim assist, Hidden Hand is another perk that can take an average pulse rifle into an amazing one. Aim assist will give your bursts a little bit higher of a chance to register as headshots, so in PvP, this is one of my favorite perks as long as the base stats of the pulse rifle are good. And then as far as stat mods go, it really doesn't matter what you pick as long as the stability of the pulse rifle is controllable to you. My general rule of thumb is if you spend more time correcting the recoil than actually aiming, then you should probably get more stability. I hope you guys found this video helpful, and let me know what you think of these State of the Weapon class videos, as I'm looking to do more in the future. This has been Patrick Casey with Planet Destiny, your guide to the Destiny universe.